Hi, I'm Jay Berkey, and this is your Iowa Community Report. We're here today with Ted Williams, who's the co-principal of the Williams Group. This is a Des Moines-based human resources and training firm with a national clientele. Ted, demographic statistics indicate that there will be more than 300,000 job vacancies in the next 6 or 7 years, and about 70,000 vacancies in the Des Moines metro area alone. Iowa has a small population. How are state and local leaders addressing this potential worker shortage crisis?
To answer your question, Jay, we have a situation in which we've known for some time that we were going to have vacancies, but it appears that when the CEOs really start to become aware of it, then it became a galvanizing issue. A significant amount of time and energy has been placed on recruiting our young folk, that is, having them come back home or keeping them. And the problem with that, from my perspective, is that we don't have enough young folk to recruit and bring back home. And I'll give you an example. If you ask someone in Iowa, what are we doing to assure that we're going to have the workforce that we need, they'll say, well, we're working with young people. But we have, right here in Des Moines, 500 young professionals. They actually are an affiliate of our Chamber of Commerce. And a significant number of these young folk are Iowa born, which would be native Iowans, primarily young white males and females. And I'm suggesting to you that with a population of 3 million, 300,000 vacancies statewide, 70,000 vacancies in the greater Des Moines metro, that's not enough. We're going to have to recruit immigrants, we're going to have to recruit gays, people of color, differently able people, and people over 60. That's going to be our complement that we're going to have to really work for. I certainly believe that we should focus on our young people, but if we only focus on our young people, we will be limiting our possibilities.
Well, the issue of immigration has been a hot topic as of late. Mm-hmm. How does that fold into the whole issue of worker shortage?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 20 years, in the New York area for approximately 5, and I've been here 12. And my work takes me all over the country, so it's kind of fascinating, the spin on immigration depending on what part of the country you're from. We all need qualified workers. We have bodies. Nobody's short of bodies. But do we have qualified workers? And so when we enter into the dialogue, words like illegal aliens, that suggests that a significant number of people in this country are in fact illegal, and in fact they're not. And we have approximately 12 million illegals. We're not going to send them home wherever they are. I don't care what you say, we're not going to send them home. Mm-hmm. We need all the help we can get, not just in Iowa, but throughout the United States. We need quality, qualified workers.
Ted, what recommendations would you make to impact diversity recruitment and retention efforts?
I think it's a great opportunity for the business community, the local community, the governmental community to work in a partnership so that we can identify and bring folk different from us to our area so that they can make a contribution. And here's what I'm talking about. I happen to be president of the African American Business Association, and we have a strategic alliance with the Latino Business Association, Alianza, as well as the Iowa Asian Alliance. Together, we represent 500 minority-owned businesses. Now, when I say 500 minority-owned businesses, most people don't believe there are 500 minorities in Iowa, let alone 500 businesses. It is crucial to us that we have a workforce, because there's another thing a lot of people have not paid much attention to. The big corporations, Principal, Nationwide, Wells Fargo, as they are searching for a workforce, many of them are not going to necessarily need workers as a function accomplished. They're going to outsource. They may outsource to our businesses. So it is important that we pay attention to their dilemma, because it's our dilemma. So now how are we going to get these people? Iowa is not a destination state. Let's be frank. We don't have mountains. We don't have oceans. But let me tell you what we do have. Having lived on both coasts, I could not afford to purchase any of the homes, and I've had 5 that I purchased on both coasts. Okay? My son went to a public high school and got accepted to Princeton. He is in his 3rd year at the University of Iowa Law School, a top 20 law school. The very fact that he graduated from an Iowa high school was a clear indicator to him being accepted in college and law school, and I might mention that he is now a summer associate as we speak at a large Minnesota law firm.
Congratulations.
He was recruited by law firms in Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, Chicago, Omaha, because of his Iowa education. We have what we call the 2-minute traffic jam on 8th Street at 4:30 every day. You can't purchase a shack on the West Coast for under $700,000. You can buy an entire city in the state of Iowa, and they will love you and name it after you. So these are some of the things that I say are good draws. The former governor of the state lives down the street from me. A city attorney lives next door to me. Top financial planner lives across the street from me. You can pick up the phone and you can talk to anybody. You know, if you remember, we were just doing, as I walked in here, I met some people you had just interviewed. Mm-hmm. The one young lady went to high school with my son, you know? Mm-hmm. She worked in the White House, all right? So my point being is that we have a lot to offer. We have good schools. We have good jobs. We are focusing on biotech, IT, agri-tech, and by the way, in case you didn't know, Des Moines is the #2 financial and insurance capital in the world. We have surpassed Hartford, Connecticut, and we're right behind London, England. Wow. Now you tell me this wouldn't be a good place to raise your family, have a career, and even retire.
Well, I can see why it would be a good place.
Well, I'm here, and I've lived on both coasts. My son is out of the house. I could live anywhere in America, but I choose to work here. Now, this diversity piece, we have to create an environment in which people feel comfortable. A simple thing like, where is the barber? For a lot of black folk, they want to know, where's the barber shop? Where's the local church? These are key issues. We have to create an environment, not just preparing diverse people to work in the workplace, but preparing the workplace to be ready. Oftentimes people say we need to learn how to manage diversity. The thought is, how are we going to manage the minorities? I often wonder, have they ever thought, how are we going to be managed by the minorities? Because there's another reality. The American-born white male will be a minority after 2015. What that means is the entire country will be populated by minorities. So the question now becomes, do I get a break because I've been a minority longer than you, or I'm brand new at it and I'm traumatized and I need help? I mean, these are the kind of things I'm talking about. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we're not just talking about diversity just for race and gender, but we're talking about religion or philosophies, ways of life, values. Because the one thing I will tell people, go outside of America. They don't make the distinction. They don't say black American or Latino American or white American. They say American. So I find it interesting that we are regarded as a monolith outside of our country, yet we have our differences inside our country.
Well, Fast Company magazine recently designated Des Moines as an upcoming leader in the high-tech industry, but the city failed to make the top ranks due to its lack of diversity. What's your reaction to that assessment?
Well, first off, I've been a reader of Fast Company for some years, and I'm really proud that Des Moines was in the running. But I think the Fast Company probably did us a favor. This is a disinterested third party. They've had an opportunity to view us and compare us with other cities throughout the world, not just throughout the United States. And I think our problem here in Des Moines is that we have a leadership that does believe it thinks in diversity, but it doesn't really have its arms around it. I can't tell you how many times I've been in situations where the leadership has determined, here's our course of action. And then they bring in diverse groups and say, here's our course of action. You want to be a part of it? As opposed to, well, tell me from your perspective what we can do. I've seen recruiting trips where conventional wisdom says, we're going to go out and recruit Latinos. So we're going to bring a Latino with us to the city we're going to so we can recruit. Why not bring the white male who can hire? That's the guy that's going to make the decision. Now the Latino who's there can say, I like the place, it's been good to me. But I think just that kind of thought never occurs, that we need to understand something, that we are competing with every major city for the same talent. And if we're going to be different, we're going to have to not figure out how we can have them adjust to us, but how we can adjust to them. We're going to recruit women. Women are a numerical minority. And one of the biggest problems we have is we're dealing with a different kind of employee. You see, these days, information is free. Knowledge you have to pay for. You can get on Google and get any kind of information. But see, knowledge. So let's go take a look at this company. This is a top company. Let's take a look at how many women and how many minorities are in the senior ranks, not middle management, not hourly and wage. That's what people look at. So you could say numerically we have a diverse workforce. But when you start looking at the C-suites, when you start looking at who's in the succession pool, you don't see women, minorities, the disabled, and immigrants. That tells a story, not the marketing. We talk about the business case. That is the empirical evidence that we're doing something, not that we can do nice film and we can do marketing and we can say, my name is Jose, I love Des Moines. That's fine. But the real deal is who's in the mix. Got it.
Well, we'll be talking more about that when we come back from the break.
Okay.
I'm Jay Berkey. This is your Iowa Community Report, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to your Iowa Community Report. I'm Jay Berkey. We're with Ted Williams of the Williams Group. He's the co-founder, co-principal, actually.
Yes.
And how do you think the local business community can improve their worker recruitment and retention efforts in the context of diversity?
I think we're starting to see some components to that. Recently, I have been having some communication with Mike Ralston, who is the leader of the Iowa Association of Business. And that's fascinating because this is a 1,500 They represent 1,500 Iowa businesses throughout. So we have small businesses, large businesses. And their focus is obviously on business. And Mike and I have been talking over the last few weeks, and his question to me was, well, why don't we have more minority businesses in our organization, and why aren't we interfacing more and more? And I said, Mike, you may not realize this, and you may not have intended it, but an environment has not been created in which we can appreciate what the other has to offer. And I gave him an example. It's been said by some that the dollar changes hands 8 times in the Asian community before it gets out to the majority. 6 times in the Latino community before it gets out to the majority, and 1 time in the African American community. So what would happen if your organization and the organizations I represent were to find ways and means that dollar turned 8 times between and among us? There could be cross referrals. There could be strategic alliances. There could be some opportunities, national and international, that we might be able to work together. And I gave him an example. There are only 2 principals in my firm, yet I have strategic alliances with 18 subject matter experts throughout the country. So if I'm not able to provide a particular service, let's give an example, safety, OSHA. Say I'm working with a client and there's a need for an OSHA expert.
OSHA stands for?
Occupational Safety and Health. That's a safety. You have to be in compliance with the federal government. Now, I have a colleague on the West Coast, I have a colleague on the East Coast, and I have a colleague right here in Central Iowa. So I literally can provide that client with the service they need because I have identified subject matter pros. One of the experts happens to be a white female. The other one happens to be an African American male, and the other one happens to be a Latino male. I didn't select them that way. It just happens that way. And that's the America I'm talking about, where I have had people tell me, I can't find qualified minorities and women. I can find them. And my clients have not said we're unhappy with the associate. If you want them, you can find them. And so what we're doing is finding ways and means, a platform, as it were. Nobody can afford to work with mediocrity or people who can't deliver. Mm-hmm. So I'm not talking about unqualified people. I'm talking about highly qualified or qualifiable, all right? Mm-hmm. I'm in negotiations with a large utility right now, and they have an issue. They have a huge federal contract, but they're getting mired into some issues that have taken them away from their focus. And those issues happen to be race and gender. So they can't focus on performance, productivity, and ultimately profit because they're having to deal with these issues. And they're not going to get where they need to be until these are addressed. That's why I was a little bit late today, is that was what I was on the phone talking about. How are we going to put a game plan together? Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, we need to establish a dialogue between and among ourselves. I'm a firm believer. I support the government. Regardless of who's running it, I believe we need a government. But if I've seen a catalyst to change, it's been the business. When businesses say there's a business case, when we need to focus on that talent acquisition, we don't have the luxury. We can't tell a young woman, go home and raise babies. That might be the next president of the United States. That might be the next CEO of a Fortune 500 company. That might be the next person who can sit down and negotiate the prevention of war somewhere in the world. So we need all the talent we have. We can have meetings, but we've got to focus on the end game, results. And I will tell you right now, I know enough folk that if we were to sit down and say, let's put a game plan together, it could be done. And by the way, all these folks are not necessarily minorities. They're highly qualified folk who have proven themselves and they understand the importance of this undertaking.
Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, let me give you an example. I came to Iowa to work for the Iowa Board of Regents, and that's 5 institutions of higher learning: the University of Iowa, Iowa State, University of Northern Iowa, Iowa School of Deaf, and Iowa School of Blind. 77,000 students they serve, undergraduates and graduates. We had a situation in which the president of the Iowa State recruited a top-flight African-American engineer. He was prized throughout the country. The problem was, when he interviewed for the job, his wife discovered there was only one African-American beautician in Ames. Washington State rated the fellow from Iowa State because they said, not only do we have more African-American beauticians, how many do you need? Now, just think about what could have happened had we been able to bring that young man here. And it was all because of a hairdo. These are the kind of things that I'm talking about, where we need to be really sensitive to a young Bosnian who comes here 7 years ago and is trying to make his way. And I have examples of that where young Bosnians have come here. They now have MBA degrees and engineering degrees. He couldn't speak English 8 years ago.
Wow.
And you know, a significant number of these youngsters have told me, are you going to go back home? Their response is, I couldn't go now. This is my home. These are the people we need. We need to create, sustain, and maintain environments where they feel like they are a part of the fabric of this country. And they should be given an opportunity not only to succeed, but to fail as well.
Tell me, what contributions have minority communities made to diversity recruitment efforts?
Quite a few, but I think we're going to have to change the game plan. If you would look back historically, and this is just my opinion, so let me be real clear. If you take a look at, quote, the movement, the focus has always been on correcting social ills. Racism, sexism, ageism, and so forth and so on. And if you look back, one of the the leadership primarily came from black church, the ministry. And we have quite a few, right here in Des Moines, for example, we have quite a few highly motivated, results-oriented veteran ministers and young ministers coming. However, it's been my observation that they're trapped into a reactive modality because they're not business people. So when they're talking, their focus is the social ills, whereas the business person is talking about the economic aspect. So we literally have parallel conversations going past the other. And they will say at the end, it's been a fruitful meeting, but it really hasn't. I am suggesting that we need to reach out to our minority communities, Black, Asian, Latino. But we need to reach out as partners. For example, why not go to black churches and say, we need quality employees. Here's our profile, here's what we need. Can you help us identify these young people? And it doesn't necessarily have to be young people. And by the way, we might even consider a 10 or 15% referral fee. Now let me tell you what happens. The companies get vetted potential employees because I can assure you that organization is not going to provide that corporation with someone that, as the young people say, represents. Okay. Now think if you would multiply that, where there's a stake, not just in the individual obtaining a job, but in the community identifying individuals, making sure that that individual has what he or she needs so that they can be prepared for that job. So now you have the communities with a stake. Now, replicate that in the Asian community, the Latino community, the Black community, the Eastern European community, and we have a burgeoning African community. This is some of the things I'm talking about where the corporations can literally put in their order and the communities can help shape what they need. We need to have corporations down in the 4th grade talking to these young women and these minorities and saying, here's what you can be and here's what you need to do. Talking to a kid at 15 has many challenges. And let me suggest something to you. If you catch them young, bring them to your workplace. Let them see the kind of work there are. I do a thing every year with Business Horizons, a local organization here, and they bring about 200 high school kids, sophomore through senior, for a business boot camp for a week. And I and a lot of other business leaders talk with these young people. My particular focus is planning for college and beyond. And I talk to the young people about how there are any number of scholarships and grants out there, and you don't always have to be a straight A kid to do that. How you can prepare for internships in college, how you can prepare for that first job. That is something that goes beyond race, gender, and age.
Sure.
Every kid needs that. But I think it's particularly important that we identify those kids of color, those young women who need to be in engineering and chemical engineering. And so to me, it's going to be, if I would use, I would call it a four-legged stool approach. Government, business, the community, and I try not to make a big deal out of it, but I do believe there is a place for the churches, the synagogues, and the mosques. And if those four entities would work in concert, and it's going to be hard work. It's not going to be easy because you're going to have an organized, calibrated, concentrated approach.
Sure.
Because one of the biggest problems is the lack of continuity once you get going. It's a rah-rah piece, then they move on to something else.
Ongoing dialogue is important.
And results.
We've run out of time, but please give us the website, if you would, where you can get more information, and phone numbers if you like.
Okay. I can be reached at the Williams Group, 515-274-6899, or at www.the-williams-group.com, or at my email, ted@the-williams-group.com.
Ted, it's been a true pleasure.
Thank you.
You're doing great work out there. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so very much.
This has been your Iowa Community Report. I'm Jay Berkey, and we'll see you again soon.